Hi, my name is Garlyn.
I'm Kelly Harris.
Thank you for coming in today for this interview. So, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself?
So I'm Kelly Harris.
Mhm.
I'm a fourth-year med student at Hopkins right now. So I grew up in Connecticut. I grew up in about central Connecticut outside of Hartford. I went to high school there. I actually went to an all-girls high school. Played a lot of sports growing up. And then I had some exposure to medicine when I was actually in high school, and that's when I decided that I wanted to eventually, hopefully, go to med school. So I chose to go to Washington and Lee University for college. It's in Lexington, Virginia. It was very different from where I grew up. It was also very different. Like I said, I went to an all-girls high school, and this was an all-boys college until like the late 80s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it felt a little different, but it was a good choice for me. I feel like I learned a lot when I was there. I really grew a lot, and I totally changed as a person when I was there. So I actually came into college, like I said, I knew I wanted to be pre-med, but I also knew that it was a small liberal arts school, so I could really major in whatever I wanted. So I chose to be a religion major. Religion was great. I feel like, in retrospect, now I can say it was really the most comprehensive of all the liberal arts.
So, transitioning from college to med school can be pretty hard. How was your transition?
Sure. So I actually, in many ways, think that the undergraduate pre-med experience is infinitely harder than what med school is like. I can tell you, med school, it's hard. I think the hardest part of med school is just the volume of information that you need to learn. Like your first year is basically 4 years of pre-med all over again, crammed into one. So it's nothing that's really conceptually difficult in med school. It's just a lot of information. I think, honestly, if you can make it through being a pre-med student at any rigorous undergraduate institution, such as Hopkins, you're very well equipped.
What specialty did you want to go into in med school?
Sure. So I'm done applying for my residency position, so I find out pretty soon where I'm going, and I'm going into urology. So my first exposure in medicine when I was back in high school was in the world of women's health and obstetrics and gynecology. And most people don't really have too much exposure to urology before they start med school, even in med school. But I was lucky enough to shadow some urologists when I was in college, which was I think a lot of ways fate that made me do that, because it's what I really found that I loved and what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Can you go in a bit deeper, a few reasons why you wanted to go in urology instead of any other field?
Sure. So I think a lot of ways when I tell people that I'm going into urology, it comes as a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
Just numbers-wise, about 25% of urologists in training right now are women, and at least in terms of people who are attendings right now, only 7% are women.
Oh, wow.
So women are very underrepresented in the field of urology. It makes sense. It's a very male-dominated field. The majority of patients that we take care of are men. So it comes as a bit of a surprise to people. I mean, I think the patients that we take care of are just fantastic. We get to take care of men, women, children, all walks of life. I think the problems that we experience in urology are very, very interesting problems. I think from the oncology, there's a lot of reconstruction. We get to play with a lot of fun tools, like we use the robot a lot. We use lasers in urology. I think also it's just a fun group of people that go into urology.
Can you talk to me a moment about in your life where you had to face adversity or felt challenged by anything?
Sure. So when I was in college, so I was pre-med, and I feel like people like you and me, people who are interested in medicine, are very type A people, very perfectionist, and we like for everything to be perfect around us. And also we like to be in control of things. So I think for me, the way that really manifested was I developed an eating disorder when I was in college. It was a moment in my life that was really, really challenging, but I know how much I've grown from it. I really learned how to take care of myself and to try to really impart that on other people.
Can you describe to me one or two moments in your life that were particularly special for you?
So personally, so growing up, my parents are divorced. They got divorced when I was very, very young. And so growing up with divorced parents is never easy, but having divorced parents, my father got remarried, and so out of the whole deal, I was able to get a brother and sister. So I very, very distinctly remember when I was 6, my dad telling me that I had a new baby brother, and then when I was 7, that I had a new sister. So I can remember so clearly exactly where I was in both of those instances. And it's really been fun having Jack and Annie in my life. My brother's your age, he's a sophomore in college, and my sister's a freshman in college now. And so just watching them grow up and to grow up into the people and adults that they are now has been really rewarding for me. And I think sort of a moment in my life that was really important to me professionally was I mentioned how when I was in college I was able to shadow a urologist.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, in many ways, I think it was sort of fate and luck that it happened that way. Most people don't get the opportunity to shadow urologists when they're in college, but it was very important for me to have that exposure so early on. It really, when I came to Hopkins for med school, I got involved in the department very early on with research and finding mentors because I had had that experience so early. So I think one piece of advice that I would give to you all going through this process is just as early as you can to really explore things in medicine. You don't have to wait until you're in med school to shadow different types of physicians, to try out different areas of research that might be of interest to you. Right now is when you sort of, the book is like it's wide open. You have an empty slate. You can really try whatever you want.
So you've already given us throughout the interview advice on certain things that you wish you would do. Is there anything else that you would want to tell your undergrad self if you had the opportunity?
So I think one very good piece of advice that I kind of adopted when I was in undergrad, but I didn't really realize how important it was about finding and identifying mentors. And also, I think another key point of that, like a caveat that I would mention, is it's really important to find mentors who are like you. But then I think there's a strong benefit in having mentors that don't necessarily look exactly like who you are. So for example, when I was in college, some people have asked me, like, who was the most influential person when you were in college who really changed the trajectory of who you are? And I think many people would expect it to be somebody in medicine or somebody in the sciences. By far, I can tell you my biggest mentor in college was one of my religion professors. He really pushed me to think in different ways. He really taught me how to write well, how to read well. And I think it's sort of those intangible things that you learn from somebody that, for me at least, they changed who I was. I didn't really even think of him as a mentor when I was in undergraduate, but now that I sort of reflect on it and think back about it, he's very easily the most influential mentor that I had when I was in college.
All right, thank you, Kelly, for this interview. Thanks for sharing your experiences with us, and I hope you have a great time in residency.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.